point that Jesus was making through whether you use the camel analogy, the basketball analogy, the point is making not that it's hard to get to heaven, but that it's impossible apart from Him. But with God, all things are possible. It's about us trusting God and relying on Him, and not relying on our own abilities, our own efforts to get to heaven. Is Jesus anti-wealth? I mean, when He was here on earth, He had nowhere to lay His head. He depended on the support of others to get through. He really didn't own much more than his robe and his sandals. Today we want to consider, is there such a thing as too much money? And how does Jesus feel about it? This is Season 3, Ep.7 of Unhurried. I'm here with Ryan Viramontes in the studio. I'm Doug Kyle, your host. And today I'm going to do something different. I'm going to be the first one to bring up hockey rather than you.
I brought a little flag with me.
So we are coming off the huge USA victory over Canada in the Olympic hockey match.
Yeah.
If I understand it right,
Sure.
You got up at 5 in the morning in the dark with your kids to walk to someone else's house
Yeah,
to
no.
watch the game?
I got up at 4
Okay.
because I knew I had to be ready for church because there was going to be no time.
Yeah,
right?
This is Sunday morning.
This
by
is
the
Sunday
way,
morning.
So keep
Yes.
that in mind.
Yes.
That you had a gig.
Yeah.
Kind of an important thing happening later.
My cousin's husband always says, he always asks me like, "Oh, how was your gig on Sunday?" And I'm like, "It's church, Ken.
Yeah,
It's called church.
It's called church.
It's not a gig."
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's just it's an inside joke. But anyway, so yeah, we
You got up at 4.
yeah, I got up at 4, and I got ready for church, and so let me back up. So the day before, the kids had their assessments for the new hockey season that's starting in like a week. So they go to the rink and they do just drill after drill, and all the coaches line up, and you get all of the players' names and you assess them. You give them a rating on how their skating is, passing, shooting, all the hockey things, right? And so it's, I don't even know how many, 20, almost 30 kids were there,
Yeah.
So it's just all morning, so the kids are just, wiped out on Saturday. And so I was there with our friend, and he goes, "What are you guys doing tomorrow for the game?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know. It's so early."
I've got a gig.
I'm like, I got a gig in the morning. I go, "I don't know what we're going to do because it's so early in the morning. Like I didn't really, think how it was going to work out, And he goes, "Well, I have to play. I have a gig too." He's like, "I have to play at my church, right?" He's like, "Why don't you just come over?" Because our cul-de-sac, their cul-de-sac is on the opposite side of the main street that we live off of.
Uh-huh.
So we can literally, it's a stone's throw away. Like we can just walk over there, and most of the time we do. And so he was like, "Why don't you come over?" He's like, "I'll make tea. I'll get coffee going. I'm going to make some scones." And he's like, "Just come over and we'll watch the game before we both have to go to church."
Yeah.
You know? I'm like, "All right, that sounds great." So the kids were so excited, right? Because we got to wake up early and go. And so I told them on Saturday, I was like, "Listen," I was like, "you guys have to go to bed early." I was like, because as early as we do have to wake up on Sunday, we're going to have to wake up like 2 hours earlier to make it over to watch the game, right? And so I think I might start doing this and start just telling them there's a big event coming up.
Yeah.
Because they fell asleep. Like there was no fighting. There was no tears. There was no like arguing that I wasn't tired enough to go to bed. Like they literally were like, "Okay, good night." And then they just, boom, knocked out, and they had like, they put all their hockey stuff together. So they had like, all their hockey memorabilia, and stuff. They had like, Remy has a little Austin Matthews stuffy. So he had like that. And then Evie had like her little like polar bear thing and like her little hockey bear and all this other stuff. So like they put all their hockey stuff together, ready to go in the morning. And so I got up and I got dressed, got ready for church, and then I got them up and we walked over.
Did you get to watch the whole match, or did it? Because I kind of went long. It
did.
Did you have to leave before the end?
Yes.
To go to church?
Yeah. So I got to watch the whole first period, and then I think somewhere between the half of the second period, Mandy got up because we let Brinley sleep because we were like, there's no point in waking her up. She's going to be so grumpy. And so she texted me when she got up and got ready. And then I went back to pick them up and drove back to the house. And then we watched the end of the second period. And then after that, we packed up and we left. And so then we were, getting updates while we were here. And then when I got here, one of our sound guy had it on his iPad. And then one of our guitar players had it through his pedal system for his guitar, works off of Bluetooth also. So he had it going through his pedals so we could listen to it while we were playing.
Oh, man. Well, I didn't get up early on Sunday because of my gig.
Yeah. You mean church?
Church. We call it church. I was able to, I kind of knew what happened because I kept telling people, don't tell me what happened because I'm going to watch it Sunday afternoon. But everybody was excited. So I kind of knew it was going to be good news. But it's fun to watch it in the afternoon. And
oh, man.
I'm so excited about the merch update today because of the story that you just told.
Yeah.
But I'm going to save that for just a moment because we got something else to do when it comes to our merch. So we told people that we would give away, we have these 3 premium stickers that you can go on your laptop, your water bottle. You can do it. There's lots of different ways that like you said, if you drive well, put it on your bumper.
Yep.
So today is the day to give those away. And people have been entering the contest through leaving comments on YouTube. So I'm just going to shuffle these.
Okay.
And there's a couple repeats in here because they, I told them they could enter more than once, and if they said that's live, they got extra for that.
That's live.
If anybody wins too, we'll just put their name aside and draw someone else. So go ahead and just draw whichever one you want there. The first winner of these stickers is Richard. Congratulations, Richard.
Nice.
It makes sense because he's a faithful listener.
He is, and a faithful commenter too.
Yeah. He makes a lot of good comments.
Yes,
so Richard, well done.
Yeah, well done.
All right, that one of those goes to Richard. Secondly, all right, Byron.
Nice.
Byron was actually a late entry and but was enthusiastic. So congratulations, Byron. I think his name is in here a couple times, so let's, if his comes up, we'll just put it aside. Go ahead, grab another one there. Kirk.
Nice.
Congratulations, Kirk.
Very cool.
Excellent. All right, so
good job,
Kirk,
everybody.
Byron, Richard, congratulations. Catch us on Sunday. We will, they all happen to be in our church, so we can easily get those out. Congratulations to those. But I want to say that our listeners are ridiculous because early on in the podcast we mentioned, hey, just for being, really not serious, just being goofy about it, we need some merch for this.
Right.
And that has led to, let's list some of the things that we have not bought a thing.
No.
But listeners have contributed.
Yeah. Well, tote bag
was amazing.
Yeah.
There's only one of those.
I have, and you have it. Yeah. The hats.
The hats were great giveaway. Lots of hats that we gave away.
The pucks, the magnet bottle opener.
The
pucks.
bottle opener, 2 sides to every puck.
Get 2 sides.
Bottle opener. Yep. There were the mugs.
The mugs. I have a hat now.
You have a hat here. The mugs were very nice.
Yeah.
Those were really popular. Yeah. We had the stickers that we just gave away today. So a lot of pretty good merch.
Yeah. Great merch.
This one is probably the craziest, most awesome one we have. I'm going to just have you describe this. Would you describe what we have here?
We have an official ice hockey puck with a very nice graphic. I mean, it looks great. Of Doug and I from the podcast.
Yeah, on a hockey puck.
On a hockey puck. We've made it. We're officially a hockey podcast at this point.
It's. I guess we are. I want to search on YouTube for hockey podcasts and see if we come up.
I think we should.
We probably do.
We've said it. We've talked about it so many times. It has to come up.
These are beautiful.
They're
these
amazing.
These are beautiful hockey, like legitimate hockey
Yeah.
pucks. I mean, you could, if you don't play hockey, I guess you can use it as a paperweight. You can
Sure.
use it as, I mean, you could frame this and put it on your wall, all kinds of things. But here's the catch: there's only 3 of these,
Right.
and I want one.
I already have mine right here.
You want one, so we have one to give away. We have one to
One.
give away,
We have
and
one.
we have to figure out how to give it away. It
How
needs
are we
to be
gonna do
something
that?
very, it needs to be a little hard to get to this.
I know.
We want something, a serious effort
Yeah, I
to
know.
get this.
I know.
So
I'm not above getting bribes. I have no dreams or aspirations to ever make it into the government office or anything
Yeah.
like that. So bribe away. You know what I mean? I love the sour belts from Trader Joe's.
Well, for the record, I'm not taking bribes, but Ryan might be.
I might.
Yeah. So what I would like is I would like our listeners to on YouTube recommend.
Yes.
Give us some
That would be fun.
recommendations, some ideas of how people
Yeah.
could win this puck,
Yeah.
because it's really nice.
Right.
It's very nice.
Right. I can bring some of my hockey buddies and we can do like a hockey contest.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, that's a good idea.
if you can score a goal on a goalie.
Yeah, if you can get past 3 defenders and get it into the net, good for you.
Good for you.
Yeah. All right. You're not going to see me on ice skates, so that's not going to happen. But
Have you ever skated before?
if you call it that, yes, I have. I've been on ice with ice skates.
With ice skates.
I don't
okay.
know that anyone would call it skating.
Yeah.
But years ago, we were in Yosemite right before Christmas, and we thought, our kids were young, and we thought, let's take a Christmas photo. This
Yeah.
would be great because they had this ice rink up
Sure.
there. We skating outdoors under Half Dome on the ice rink. It
Nice.
was just
Oh,
gorgeous.
that's great.
I go, this will be a great Christmas picture. We're all bundled up and skating, and we had this idyllic idea of what it would look like, us just gliding across
Sure.
the ice, all 5 of us, someone take a picture on the side. Well, we took a bunch of pictures. We look so awkward because I don't look graceful skating. I look like I'm hanging on for dear life. I'm clutching the rim. I'm like sliding and falling. It was they didn't make it into the Christmas card.
Yeah.
They actually should have. They were probably would
Yeah.
have been funny, but
Yeah.
we never did it. So
That's funny. My brother and I were working on staff together at a church, 10 plus years ago,
uh-huh.
and they wanted to do like a staff, kind of team building kind of event, and so they're like, we're going to go ice skating.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, that sounds great.
That's fine.
That sounds great. And so, but I was like, trying to be modest,
Mhm.
right? And so I was just like, I'm just going to chill. I'm not going to do anything crazy, right? I'm like, I'm just going to take it easy, at the staff team building ice skating, And so I'm just kind of like gliding around and, everybody's like, oh, Ryan, you look comfortable. And I'm like, yeah, just like kind of doing it. And my brother looks at me and he's like, why are you skating like that? He's like, just go. And I'm like, no, I don't want to, I'm trying to play it cool. You know what I mean? He's like, you look ridiculous. And then, so finally I was like, okay, fine. And then I just zipped around really fast.
Yeah. And everybody's going, whoa.
Everybody's like, whoa, Ryan, you know how to skate. I'm like, yeah, I do.
That's hilarious. Well, I want to get into the topic that we talked
Yeah.
about. I know that for a lot of people, they were intrigued with the topic. One guy who I didn't know was an avid podcast listener at all said, I can't wait to hear the podcast this week because I want to hear, I want to get into this more deeply. So we covered the famous story of the rich young ruler, and on Sunday, and we took it. It's told 3 times in the Bible: Mark, Matthew, and Luke. I looked at Mark's version, and Mark only tells us that he is young. Only tells us that he is rich. But from the other 2 Gospels, we learn he's also young and a ruler. A matter of fact, we learn that he's very rich from the other accounts. And so here's a guy that has everything our culture seems to revere: riches, youth, and power. And yet it says in probably one of the most tragic verses in the Bible, Jesus told him the young man came to him and said, what must I do to inherit eternal life? the conversation went on. Jesus referenced the 10 Commandments, and then he says, well, you just need to sell everything you have, give to the poor, and then you'll have riches in heaven. Come follow me.
Mm.
And in Mark 10:25, this very sad verse, it says, at that the man's face fell. He went away sad because he had great wealth. So that to me is a amazing statement, because you never hear that in our culture. We never equate sadness with great wealth, right? We never go, oh, he had so much wealth, he must have been so sad.
Yeah. Well, you also hear too, like, oh, well, if I had, that much money, or if I had, what that guy has, or what they have, or whatever, like I would be, this much happier, or my problems would go away, or whatever. It's just so foreign to, the culture back then, and even our culture today.
Yeah. We don't think about putting, like you say, happiness with
Right.
great wealth. We don't think about equating sadness with great wealth.
No.
So it's kind of, to me, I don't know that people have really thought about it, but it's kind of an ironic verse. He went away sad because he had great wealth. If you just take that verse by itself, it really is, kind of a puzzle. Why would great wealth and sadness go together? It's something that no one's ever said, other than the Bible. He had too much money, and so he was really, really sad. And so that kind of ties into the title of today's podcast, and that is it possible to have too much money? Is having a lot of money and sadness do they go hand in hand? Now, the reality is that wealth and happiness don't go together, even though that's the myth. We all know people that have, lots of wealth and possessions and worldly, values, and yet there doesn't add to their happiness at all. So we know that in reality that's the case. Although, have you heard the expression, you can't buy happiness, but you can buy bacon, and that
That's a good one.
leads to happiness. So
I like that.
yeah, so, and that's leads to happiness. So
Yeah.
but
My doctor says I eat too much bacon, but because
Mm-hmm.
the cholesterol's not where it should be. But I'm like, but I mean, have you had bacon?
have you had bacon?
Tell me, have you had a BLT on a Wednesday? Because I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Like that's the greatest thing ever
Yeah.
created.
So maybe you can buy bacon.
Sure.
But other than those kind of more temporary happinesses,
Yeah.
in the big scheme of things, money, doesn't buy happiness. And so interesting to me that the Bible has this passage where sadness and great wealth are, going together, which I don't think a lot of people would put together. But more importantly than the fact that this is such an odd verse, or such a unique verse to put sadness and great wealth together, more importantly, I think for most people, they think that's the end of the story. For most people, believers, if you say, what's the story of the rich young ruler about? They would tell you everything I've just said, and they end the story with, and he went away sad
Mm-hmm.
because he couldn't do it.
Yeah.
He couldn't do what Jesus asked him to do, as if that's the end of the story. And if that's the end of the story, then we miss Jesus' explanation of what it was all about. And that's the point. We can take this in 100 different directions if we don't have Jesus actually going on, then turning to the disciples and explaining
Mhm.
what they just experienced. So I think we need to look at the story beyond just the episode itself, and look at Jesus' explanation. Well, that gets even more curious, because part of Jesus' explanation comes in Mark 10:25, where he says it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of God. And that is also a pretty famous statement about Jesus, although I don't know that people necessarily right off the bat know that that's connected to the rich young ruler, but that's part of Jesus' explanation. This kind of humorous picture. Even in my lifetime, humor has changed.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember like our kids, when Cindy's dad was around, and he would come over, and he had a way of joking that they didn't get, and it was sort of like his generation jokes.
Sure.
And I would listen to him. I go, well, they don't understand that when he was when he was younger, that was really funny.
Right.
That was a funny thing to say, but now it's kind of like, that's kind of, I don't know. That's not the way we joke around now.
Yeah.
And in my lifetime, I've seen how, humor has morphed and changed, decade by decade. And in the same way, the humor in the first century was different than it is now. And so a lot of times Jesus was being actually kind of ironic, absurd, and funny with things that he said that we don't realize that's actually first century humor.
Yeah.
When he talked about a log in your eye,
Right.
Take the speck out of
you
log out of your eye before you
Right.
take the speck out of. That wasn't just exaggeration. That was actually like stand up back then. That was actually pretty funny. I have no doubt that those listeners laughed out loud when he said that with that picture.
Right.
And the same thing here. We may not catch the humor of it, but in that culture, a camel going through the eye of a needle is a absurd and a funny picture. And Jesus was saying something that would have, maybe disarmed everybody a little bit, and also made his point with a little bit of humor.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, like he had, Jesus had such a way of describing things, and in the way that he taught in the parables and the stories that he would tell, or the analogies that he had, were just so, like you said, so poignant in that time period, but then also still today, where you're like, yeah, a camel can't go through a needle. Like, that's impossible. Like, that would never happen, right?
Yeah.
It's impossible. And he even says, too, in this passage where it's like things that us men we can't do. They're impossible for us, but it's only possible through God. And that's it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's like he always tied everything back to the salvation that God gives us. You know? But he made, funny little jokes around the way. So it's cool.
Yeah. And I think we've heard it so often, a camel through the eye of the needle, that we don't stop to think about just how ridiculous that is, how absurd it is.
Yeah.
Obviously, that can't happen. As a matter of fact, over the years, I've heard people tell this story and make a point that they try to explain it away a little bit. If you go to Israel, sometimes a tour guide will take you to a narrow pass through a pathway, and they will tell you, it's very common. I don't know if you've ever heard this. Very common to say, back in Jesus' day, there was this narrow passageway that was called the Eye of the Needle, and it was very narrow and hard for camels to pass through. And so what the travelers would have to do is they would have to unburden their camel with all the bags and all the extra equipment, and then the camel would just barely be able to squeeze through the gate known as the Eye of the Needle, or the passageway known as the Eye of the Needle. And that's what Jesus was saying, according to the tour guides. And if you hear that, it's kind of like, because you kind of like, oh, that's interesting, and that kind of sounds good, right? It kind of sounds intriguing, like, oh, that makes more sense. And the point is always, what Jesus is saying then is we just need to unburden ourselves with everything that stands in the way of us following the pathway to God. And that's what he was asking the rich young ruler to do. Just get rid of the money, because that's your burden, and then you'll be able to squeeze through. And it appeals to sort of the religious mindset. It appeals to us that want to be able to say, I can, in my own effort, get to God.
Right.
The problem is that there's no evidence anywhere that there was ever such a gate. That's just sort of become this urban legend that there was this gate, but that historians have never found anything like that in antiquity that was called that. It just sort of has grown as this legend that no one's been able to identify. The bigger problem with it is that wasn't Jesus' point. Jesus went on, and you've already alluded to it, Jesus went on to say, with man it is impossible.
Right.
That was his point.
Yeah.
He wasn't saying if you try really hard and unburden yourself and get rid of extra wealth and extra possessions and anything that's weighing you down, if you try really hard and lose a little weight, you'll be able to, squeeze through and get in through the gate and get into heaven, get eternal life. That's the bigger problem with that theory, is that it gives us it goes right against what Jesus said the point of the story was. And so I don't know if you've ever heard that. Have you ever heard that take on it? I've heard that over the years, and it's intriguing. And you go to Israel especially, and you hear that story, and you go, wow, that's really cool. But it's not, because it misses the point that Jesus was making.
Right. Yeah, it is one of those things where it's like it sounds cool in the moment, you know, and you're probably like, oh yeah, okay, and then you look at the text and you're like, wait a minute, that's not what he was talking about.
That's not what he was talking about. He wasn't talking about some passageway known as the eye of the needle, because it's super tight. Years ago, we went to this cave tour where we were up in Sequoia, and it was really cool. You have to go. You go, 15 minutes into this dark cave, and it's a tour that takes you through. And at one point, it gets really tight, and you have to squeeze between these rocks, and they called that section the Fat Man's Misery, which I thought was like a cruel name, especially since it was tight for me. It's like, wow, that's harsh. But anyway, you had to get through Fat Man's Misery, and there's this little tight part in the path where the rocks kind of jet out towards each other, and you got to squeeze through. That's the idea that this legend wants you to imagine.
Yeah.
But it is not. The story is not about us being able to try really hard to get to heaven. It's about. It's not just hard; it's impossible.
Right. Yeah. Only through God can we get there.
Yeah. Yep. And that's what Jesus says in Mark 10:27. Jesus looked at them and said, "With man this is impossible, but not with God. All things are possible with God." It really emphasizes that it's only with God and with His grace and with His mercy that we get into heaven, and not with us really unburdening ourselves or getting rid of everything in our life. We can't sacrifice our way to heaven. And so I saw you in first service this week.
Yeah.
Is that when you normally are in there, first service? For some reason, I thought sometimes you're there second service.
No, most of the time it's first service.
Because of the youth.
Yes, because second service I'm usually pulled away to youth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I use the basketball analogy, which I won't develop here because I spent plenty of time in the message on it. But just the idea, the point was, this would be not trying to get a basketball through a small hoop,
right?
But like a carnival contest,
right?
But like trying to get a basketball through into a thimble,
right?
Or into a hoop the size of a wedding band,
right?
It's not just hard; it's impossible,
right?
That's sort of the camel eye of the needle analogy that Jesus is using here, and I thought I just wanted to bring that up because we've got so much hockey talk, maybe a little basketball talk every now and then.
Well, good. I'm glad. I also played basketball too.
As did I.
Right.
So we have some. I can actually have a intelligent conversation about it, as opposed to hockey, where I just throw out terms and don't know what they mean.
Right. Well, we often jokingly say to each other on Sundays that we run the pick and roll.
Mm-hmm.
Because you are so much taller than me that in a basketball game you would play more of a center or a power forward position, and I was always a point guard or a shooting guard, which are a little bit on the smaller side. So. We always say we run the pick and roll on Sundays.
Run the pick and roll, which is a basketball term that a lot of people might not know what it is, like some of the hockey terms that I didn't know. But we pick and roll is like the teamwork. Let's work together here.
Yeah.
We set each other up to score. So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I heard something about basketball too about you.
What's that?
That you lost in horse.
Oh well.
To Maddie.
Yes, I did. But was that something that was necessary to bring up here?
I just wanted to talk about it.
Maddie, one of our staff wives, and also, middle school volunteers, challenged me to a game of horse, and turns out she's good.
I've heard stories.
Yeah.
Because I used to play hockey with her brother.
Yeah.
And her brother has told me stories that he says that Maddie is the best athlete of the family.
Yeah, she can shoot.
Yeah. And apparently, I'm not sure, but I think she still holds a record, I think, for either most points or assists, I think, at her high school. Like, it still has not been broken.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up.
Sure.
Because that makes me look better. I lost to a real athlete, a legitimate
She's
athlete
legit.
who's in her 20s, so hey, there's no shame in that.
Yeah. Well, I still, of course, part of my ability is to always have way more confidence than I should, and so I'm like, well, you still haven't beat me. So, I'm still undefeated.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to see you play Maddie. I want
Okay.
to watch that horse match, and then the winner plays me.
Okay.
So we'll do that. And then someone else has to beat the winner of that to get the hockey puck.
There you go.
Maybe that's how they'll have to get it. We'll have to figure it out. Well, the point that Jesus was making through whether you use the camel analogy, the basketball analogy, the point is making not that it's hard to get to heaven, but that it's impossible apart from Him. But with God, all things are possible. And it's about us trusting God and relying on Him, and not relying on our own abilities, our own efforts to get to heaven. And so I just want to end with just a handful of takeaways that we should keep in mind when we think about the rich young ruler. And I can just kind of hit these pretty quickly. But the first takeaway, I think, for us today, living in our world today and applying this passage to us, is that there are still so many false securities in life, so many things that we can trust in and put our feeling of security and even worth in and hope in that will let us down. And Jesus was trying to show the rich young ruler that his wealth was a false security. And in the same way for us, we can do the same thing. It may be wealth, but it could be other things. Think about the other things he had going for him. It could be youth. Sometimes we think, I'm young, I'm invincible. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we think, I'm wealthy, I'm invincible. Sometimes we think, I've got a lot of power, I'm invincible. All of those things are fragile, and all of those things can end up leaving us, or can go as quickly as they came.
Yeah.
Youth fades. Wealth doesn't always last. Power is usually temporary. It is just seasonal. And so we need to realize that all of those things are great to leverage for God's kingdom, but not to put our trust in entering God's kingdom because of those things.
Right.
They're false securities. And Jesus wanted this young man, and He wants us to see that anything that we're trusting apart from Him is thin ice.
Hey.
Going back to
wow,
hockey
that
term.
was nice.
Thin ice.
Wow.
There we go. Second thing, I think the second takeaway is that trying to be good enough is a game you can't win.
Yeah.
That's something I said in the message. Trying to be good enough is a game you can't win. And so in addition to being rich, young, and a ruler, he was really a pretty good guy. Jesus brought up the commandments, and he said, I've done all of that. And I don't think he was exaggerating. I think he had done it. It wasn't perfect, but he had tried his best to live a good moral life.
Yeah.
And yet he didn't know, was that enough? And trying to be good enough is a game you can't win.
Right.
And so in addition to wealth, we need to see that part of the story of the rich young ruler is morality, is just thinking that being a good person. And probably these days, more than wealth, most people think that, hey, I'm going to get to heaven because I'm a good person. I've lived a good life. My good deeds outweigh my bad deeds. But you never know. Just like this guy, is that enough? We don't know, and it's not. Apart from God, it's not enough. The next thing I think is a good takeaway is God is inviting us to this with God life, and He says, with man impossible, but with God all things are possible. And I love that phrase, with God. That's how we're supposed to live our lives, with God. Whether we have youth, riches, power, whether we're old, poor, or have very little influence, doesn't matter where you are. God invites us to this with God life, to live our lives with Him, and to see what He's entrusted us with is enough for that day, enough for what we face, and something that we can utilize for Him.
Yeah, I wrote it down. I loved you said on Sunday, you said salvation is not achieved, it's received.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. It just once again, it's just evident of the promises that our God makes to us, and all the things that our world views as wealth, power, and money, and all these other things, and these glamorous lifestyles. God says that none of that matters. If all that matters is that your identity is found in me,
Yes.
and let that be the reflection that shows.
Yeah.
So all the other things are just fleeting.
Yes.
Youth is fleeting, wealth, like you said, power is fleeting. It's temporary, but the one thing that isn't is God.
That's right. That's right. And when you realize that, when you realize it's not achieved, it's received, then you can kind of go back to the young man's question. And when I look at that question, I underline the phrase "I do." His question was, "What must I do
Yeah.
to inherit eternal life?" And that was his mindset. There's something I can do. Can I, keep the commandments well enough? Can I use my wealth partially, probably in his mind, for the kingdom? What must I do? And in the end, it wasn't about what he could do.
Mm-hmm.
It's about what Jesus did
Yeah.
for him and for us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the with God life. The with God life is realizing it's what Jesus did for me, not something I have achieved on my own. Another takeaway is no one size fits all. We spent some time in the message showing that the way Jesus, what he demanded of the rich young ruler was different from what he demanded of other people.
Mm-hmm.
He tended to tailor his instructions to the individual based on what they need, because he could see their hearts, he could see their souls, he could see their future. He knew exactly what was the mountain in the way
Mm-hmm.
of them getting where they needed to be. And so there's no one size fits all, but one thing that we can say is a principle from this story is that no matter what, Jesus is calling us to radical dependence, to depending on him rather than those things that can clutter our lives and distract us from him. Radical dependence is what he's calling us to. And then the thing that, to me, this is the most, poignant part of the story and part of the message is that, and I just said it real fast, and I'm not even sure if anybody got it or not, but I would, here a couple days later, I'd like to maybe revisit that again, and that is, in some way, I mean, it's typical to say, this is just the rich young ruler, it's not us. Jesus is not asking us to sell everything, give everything away. But in reality, by the end of our lives, everybody eventually gives everything away.
Yeah.
We all eventually give everything away. So why, our youth goes, our wealth goes, our power goes, we give everything away at the end of our lives. Why not give it away to Jesus?
Mm-hmm.
Why not give it away to the kingdom? Why? And this is the idea of using our lives and spending our lives. If you think about spending our lives rather than spending our wealth, but spending our lives for him.
Mm-hmm.
Give it to him. All of it is temporary anyway. So why wouldn't we live it for him? It's easy to say, we've talked about this in a podcast before, but like, would you die for Jesus? Well, most of us aren't going to have to face that issue, but are you willing to live for him?
Mm-hmm.
That's the harder question.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, to me, the same kind of thing we can ask about the rich young ruler. Would you give everything away to follow Jesus? Well, most of us aren't going to have to face that question, but would you live your life giving for him?
Mm-hmm.
Would you spend your life for him? Because in the end, it all goes away.
Right.
But, or as John Ortberg famously says, it all goes back in the box. It's like the game of life. You get done playing the game of life, and then you put all the pieces and everything back in the box, and it goes away. But the thing that lasts is our eternal with God life,
Mm-hmm.
life with him.
Yeah, very much. And the other thing too is that, like, especially in my life, I've just seen so many examples of great people, that have done very well for themselves, either in their business or in what they do in their careers and things like that. And then, but they still are very Christ centered, in the sense of they're not giving, in the sense of the young ruler, right? They know that they can't buy their way into heaven, and their legacy is much deeper than all of the wealth that they've accumulated. You know what I mean? They're still very, what I would consider to be rich in life. They have great families and a great church and all these other things. And that's what I think Jesus is telling us in this story, is that all the other things of the world will fade away, but the legacy that you can give to your children or even the people in your church, that's what matters,
Yeah. Great point. Well, hopefully that's a helpful way to think about the rich young ruler and what we're supposed to take away from that story. We invite listeners' questions along the way. Other than a couple, comments I got on Sunday, like, man, that got me thinking, and I'm looking forward to the podcast. I don't have any specific questions.
I actually had one I answered. Well, Christy left a comment, and I didn't write on it, but I answered her question on Sunday.
Okay.
So it didn't go unnoticed.
All right.
I got it on Sunday. So
all right. You got it. Yeah. So there's a question that came in and you addressed it.
Yes. Yeah. It was a musical question, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna do this. So she sent me a Greek song, and
I saw that.
Yeah, and she wanted to know how come she couldn't figure out the beat when it goes back to the top of the verse, and it was actually really cool. I loved sitting down and listening to it because I was like, I don't listen to Greek music and traditional Greek music, and I was listening to it and I was like, it's really cool. They added what they call a 2/4 bar. So in music, there's 4 beats, right, in a bar. They added 2 extra ones. So when you're counting it, you're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4. And so I was like, that's so cool. I would have never listened to that song or known that it did that.
Yeah.
So I was like, thanks for sharing. I'm like, that's great. Yeah.
Well, that's cool that you answered that question, because we talked about music and beats a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
so for those who are have questions about hockey, have questions about music, have questions about the Bible, ask Ryan. If you have questions about the Bible, ask me. That's all I got.
No, you've got more than that.
So this is a wide podcast.
Yeah,
we
Katharine Hepburn movies.
Katharine Hepburn impressions. All of that we've got.
Yeah. I saw Calla Lilies literally last week, and I saw them, and Mandy looked at me, and we made eye contact because we were out in public.
Yeah.
And she looked at me, and I went, "The Calla Lilies."
The Calla Lilies are in bloom again.
She just walked away from me. She was over it. The Calla Lilies.
Oh, man. All right. Well, that's throwback to last week's podcast.
Yeah,
if you have no idea what we're talking about, you have to listen to last week. And thank you all for listening, for following along, for our viewers, our listeners. I would love to hear if you have any recommendations on how we give away this beautiful Unhurried hockey puck. It is honestly, you can't tell on the camera, I'm sure, but this is really nice.
It's very nice.
This is very, very nice. So if you have ideas, recommendations, we'll look at that and consider how we're going to do that. And I'm pretty happy because we got through this whole podcast without the picture falling down, so that's good. Behind us.
It fell down 4 times before we started.
Yeah. So thanks, everyone, for following along, for listening. And until next time, this has been Unhurried with me, your host, Doug Kyle. I look forward to talking soon.